Hello and welcome to Environmental Sciences. My name is Stephanie Cho and I'll be the host of today's panel. So, where is everyone joining in from? Let's see if we have any comments here. Hello. Vancouver from Erica. And Kelowna. Wonderful. So first, I would like to gratefully acknowledge that Science World is located on the traditional and unceded land of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. So today, we will start with a quick introduction from our amazing group of mentors, followed by a hosted discussion. So if you have any questions for the mentors, please feel free to put those in the chat at any time. And today, our technician's name is Dawn. And hold on, you got a comment here. Oh, someone here is from Port Coquitlam. Wonderful. So our technician today is Dawn, and she will be monitoring the chat. So if you have any technical issues, they would be happy to assist. So we ask that you keep your comments in the chat and the question section respectful and relevant to the topics being discussed. So now is the time to meet our mentors. Hello. Wonderful. So
Hi.
Hello. Hi, everybody. So let's start by going around and doing a brief introduction before we jump into the questions. So mentors, if you could, oh, you're already on the screen. Can I get each of you to let us know your name, your job title, as well as the thing that you love most about your career? Erica, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Erica. I'm a senior designer, an industrial designer. And I think the most exciting part about my job is that every day is different. So every day, every week, the problems change, the people change. So you're always creating something new and you never get bored.
What about you, Catherine?
So I'm the climate change lead and I guess somewhat community relations geological engineer. And so I work in mining, transportation. I do work in oil and gas and also for communities. And we look at geohazards and how to support our clients bring climate change into how we design and come up with different solutions, engineering solutions. So I'm actually a geological engineer. So I mostly studied rocks and dirt and understand how the water interacts with that. And I think the thing that I enjoy the most is working with people, but being able to describe pretty complex things that I get to touch with my hands and travel quite a bit throughout the world.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier that you got to work in a mine in the Dominican Republic.
Yep. There's a mine in the middle of the Dominican Republic that I've spent quite a bit of time in, and also in northern BC, in the Northwest Territories, the Yukon. I've traveled quite a bit for work.
Oh, so neat. So your job is kind of taking you all over the world.
Yep.
Very cool.
Cool place.
Liz?
Thanks, Stephanie. Nice to meet you, Erica and Catherine. My name is Liz Waterfield, and I'm calling in from the traditional and unceded territory of the Okanagan Silk peoples in the Okanagan, Kelowna. If anybody out there, it looks like we have a lot of lower mainland folks. I am an environmental project manager, and I would call myself, I sort of dabble more in the regulatory sciences for projects in and around creeks usually, but I do a lot of environmental assessment too. So industries and sectors that I work in would be similar to Catherine, which is mining, oil and gas, and transportation. A lot of transportation, and as a resulting of the atmospheric river event last November. I think right now, and specifically since 2017, what I love about my job is the opportunity to help build a more resilient community. So because of changing climates, which we all already have kind of dabbled on, getting to work on flood resilience.
Thank you for your introduction. So I would love to know, how did all of you get started in your career? Erica?
Oh boy, I'm always going first.
Well, I'll change it up if you want. Or we can go, who would like to go next?
It's okay. I'm all good. I had a very long and winding path actually to get to where I am today. I've always been someone who like loves to make things, build things. Even as a little kid, I was always taking things apart, trying to figure out how they worked. So, but when I was going to school here in Vancouver, we didn't really know about product design or industrial design. It's not really a huge industry in Canada. So I actually went into graphic design first. I worked for an ad agent, a smaller ad agency here in Vancouver for about 3 years, and kind of was like, okay, there has to be a little bit more than just like 2D, business cards and things like that. So I actually went back to school for environmental design, where, and that was down in California. So I really got to immerse myself in spaces and how do people interact with space, how do they move through space and solve those kind of larger problems. And then eventually I narrowed my focus to product and furniture design. So I took a class that again I absolutely fell in love with. I was like, oh, maybe this is what I want to do. So as my first job out of school, I was very lucky to be able to work for a company in Tokyo who did everything. So they designed spaces, products, as well as experiences. So by working through them, I got a lot of experience and the skills to kind of narrow my path and have a portfolio ready that was more geared towards product and industrial design. So it was a lot of kind of trial and error and figuring out, what worked for me and what I really enjoyed doing. But I have to say now, I absolutely love it. And I would recommend it to anyone who has like a little bit of a creative bone in their body.
So what kind of skills do you think like helped you most in your transition from your graphic design to industrial?
I think as a beginner, the hard skills are very important. So being able to communicate well, know the programs that, like sketching, rendering, 3D CAD, those are very, very important, especially in the beginning. But also throughout my career, I feel like the people who succeed the most are the ones that are open-minded, ask a lot of questions and open-ended questions as well to really get to the root of we're all solving problems, right? I feel like it's like a creative problem solver or visual problem solver. That's kind of what my career or what my job is. But to really, really understand the people that you're designing for, to be able to create a better product for them, if that's a skill, I think that's what you really need to master.
Great, thank you. Let's go with Liz. Liz, how did you get started?
Yeah, that's such a good question, Stephanie. So I grew up in a really small town in the Kootenays called McCusp, and my dad was a logger. And my passion for the environment started there. It wasn't nothing against, like it's nothing to do with logging. I would just go with him. Dad, what's that tree? What's that frog? What's that bear? What's that fish habitat? Like I just wanted to know everything about the environment. I wanted to be outside with him. I would be, what's that creek called? It was, I don't know, sort of weird. I literally would bring my Barbies with him and be going and playing them in the truck. And I didn't really know that was my passion until it circled back to university, where I thought I wanted to be a writer. Surprise, you don't always want to do what you start in first year. And I went into a geography course where we literally went hiking for labs and did that. We identified different, geological features, different water courses, literally just what was around you. And I immediately switched my major. I moved from there, and surprise, surprise, I write all day at work. And it's totally a lot of my creative writing skills and reporting skills translated right into what I'm doing professionally. So honestly, I just went into first year and I followed the courses that I loved, and it landed me in a career that I really like. most days.
Things you're kind of like Erica, started out in one thing and then kind of ended up where you are now.
Most people do, to be honest. Be flexible and go with what you love. Honestly, that would be what I would say. You don't stick it out just for the sake of sticking it out.
Yeah, and the same question I asked about Erica, what skills do you think are most important for what you do now?
You have to like it. Honestly, I think first and foremost, if like you want to like what you're doing, the environmental consulting world that I'm in is massive. You know, some people, I have colleagues who they just want to hike and be in the field. Some people who just want to write, and some people who just want to manage. You know, being open to trying both things. But I also think that taking opportunities and being honest with yourself. So I guess that's a soft skill. And then I would say skill-wise would be, you know, understanding plant species, understanding fish species, just understanding the general environmental species that are around you for my job would be helpful.
Great. Catherine, we'd love to know, how did you get started in your career?
I perhaps knew a little bit earlier. I actually have a dad who's an electrical engineer, and I had kind of understood what engineers did, and my dad always described them as superheroes, and that was something that appealed to me. And I had this idea that if I went into environmental engineering, I could be outside, I could help with anything related to trees and kind of bringing people together. And so when I was in grade 9, in grade 10, I did a project that looked at environmental engineering, and I started to dive into what could that be. And then when I decided to pursue that. I liked math and science, and I did reasonably well. So I actually pursued that and went into engineering at Queen's. So I was in Kingston, Ontario, and went that way. And at first year is general. So everyone does the same courses. And I got to dibble dabble on everyone, on all of the different programs. And man, oh man, did I ever dislike some of them. They were not for me. And what I was introduced to was geological engineering. And that one is a little different. It is very tactile. In the sense that you get to use your hands, you're feeling how gritty things are. Like sand is gritty, clay is smooth. And it also is quite creative. So you're trying to understand if there's a type of rock over here and a different type of rock over here, how do they connect to each other and the story that exists between them? And so I ended up choosing geological engineering and went through that way and took environmental courses and traveled in my undergrad as well. And it gave me an appreciation for a different way of looking at the world, because I traveled throughout South America and also in Canada and then Europe, because I did not finish my university degree in the 4 years that are generally expected. And then I started working for a company that we're a consultant. So we work in multiple industries. It is super creative and yet very technical and geotechnical. And then I went back to school and I did a master's in Earth and Energy Resource Leadership, because I wanted to understand business, policy, law and regulation, and then community engagement. I also really wanted to understand, how do we bring people together to create something that didn't exist before, that brings in the environment, society, and money all together. And that kind of changed the direction that I went into. And then that led into integration of climate change and community into the geological engineering. So it's quite a road actually that I've taken in the past 10 years. And it's been pretty dang exciting to see, very similar to Liz and to Erica, that you don't necessarily, like, yes, I knew, but I did not anticipate where I am today when I first went into engineering, or even when I was younger and was in high school.
Did any of you have, or we have a question from Alina. I think this is for Erica, right? So what was it like working in Japan? And we often hear about how intense Tokyo working culture is, and it sounds really busy.
Yeah, it was definitely busy and intense, but I loved it so much. I traveled there twice. Once I did a school exchange program for a semester where we interacted with Tama University and their students, and we did a collaborative project together. And I think that really helped me. That experience made me feel very comfortable about coming back on my own later to work. I learned the language a little bit. I wasn't trying to only rely on English. It helped me navigate the city. So I lived in Meguroku, which was kind of a smaller outskirt of Tokyo itself. But in terms of experience, I would highly recommend it. It was very grueling, but I learned so much and I got to meet so many amazing people. And I think just what I really loved about Tokyo is kind of like the clash of cultures of modernity and technology, but then also just the traditional ways of doing things. They have so many amazing artisans. So I'd highly recommend it. Do it while you're young, though.
Yeah, so to kind of get back to what we were talking about, I was wondering if there was a certain person or a mentor that kind of helped you with that transition or inspired you to switch gears and end up in the careers that you're currently in. Let's start with Liz.
Yeah, I think I have 1,000,002 mentors, to be totally honest. And I encourage anybody, mentor, get proteges, inspire, be inspired. I think like I said earlier, my dad, and it sounds like Catherine too, both of us sort of and my mom too, massively looking up to my parents. Just my big sister also works at the same company that I do. And then now at work, I have 1,000,000 mentors. I think I couldn't even list anybody specifically that got me into it. Professors, anybody who was willing to mentor me, I've basically just accepted their advice on how to get into it. You're willing to give me advice, I will take it from you. And honestly, I think, and if anybody's willing to accept advice from me, I'll give it, I think. So I don't know if that really necessarily answers the question, but it's just being really, really open to learning and share the knowledge.
Yeah, that's great. I also want to add on to this question, since you were talking about advice, Liz. Is there a specific piece of advice that you would give to a 14-year-old that was looking to get started in your field of work?
Yeah, two things. So if you like being outside and that's what you want to do all of the time, definitely look into the biological sciences. I think that, if you love hiking and you love doing this, you can make a career out of it. I have, and I know many other people who have. And don't let anybody tell you that it's not a job. Do you know how many people told me during my career, like, yeah, but nobody gets hired doing that? They do. And if you love it and you want it, go after it.
I love that. And I feel like when you find a job that's doesn't feel like work, it's like you never work a day in your life,
Yeah, I agree. I think it's so true. And yeah, so many people are like, yeah, you're not like geography. What do geographers do? A lot of things.
Catherine?
Yeah, I think for me, I started out not like with a professor in my undergrad. So when I went to university, and he brought in a lot of questions about figuring out what you like and also being creative, which I think in engineering is sometimes not as commonly discussed or encouraged. Not necessarily, it depends on how your brain works, but for me, it was really helpful. And so I started to work with him. I was a TA, so I was a teaching assistant, and I worked for him over the summer. And he helped me look at things in a different way and kind of encouraged me to do these things that were perhaps a little different. And then from there, I had a mentor that worked with me again in something a little different, but still within the consulting company that I work with. It's in geological engineering, but it's looking at air photos. So in that sense, think about in an airplane, or you're thinking about a satellite. And so they take pictures from either the air or from in the space. And then we can look at those and understand how things have changed over time, how water moves, or perhaps how vegetation is changing. And so he really encouraged me to look at that and try and piece together the story of what had happened. And then he had me work on a litigation case. So that means that I worked on a legal case that was a bit controversial, but what was unique about it is that it made you choose your words carefully because everything you said had a specific reason behind it. You had to be aware of providing just the truth and nothing but the truth, and not go beyond that into projecting something that perhaps was an idea instead of something that was actually there. And he actually thought that maybe I would want to become a lawyer because I just loved it. This like idea of doing something that took all of my expertise and then also let me kind of dive into the nitty gritty of why and how that impacts a community. I think the mentorship piece is the trust. And at first he would make me print off everything I did, and then he would correct it with a red marker, and he would give it back to me. And then he would come and review my work over my shoulder, and he would review it online. And then I started getting to send out emails and different things to our client myself. And he just opened the world and opened my eyes to what is possible. And it's been a complete joy. And he checks in with me, even though I don't work with him consistently anymore. And I would consider him one of my biggest mentor that helped me in a way that I didn't think was possible.
We have a question here from Natalie. She's wondering, are there any challenges that anyone has encountered along their career journey that you didn't think was a challenge but actually were?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, when you travel for work, you can be gone for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So learning how to create a space that is your own and routines, or perhaps having someone at home that checks in with you, that kind of keeps things. That's one thing that perhaps if you travel for work is really handy, because I've traveled from days to weeks to more than a month. And so that can, for some people, that's a challenge, and for others, it's pure joy.
Yeah, building on what Catherine just said, it was definitely when I first started in my career, there was a lot of 2-week-long field shifts living in hotels, and it was learning to be away. And it was awesome. I was getting to ride a helicopter every day and doing some really, really fun stuff. But you're out there with strangers who are really good people, but they're not your people. Also building on that would be getting into the industry was definitely, I would always say do it, but it didn't happen overnight for me and a lot of my colleagues as well. So really having the network and the gall to reach out and do what I could to get into it was probably the biggest challenge for me.
I think I can really sympathize with all of the travel comments. I think on that front, my biggest challenge has been having pets while also traveling for work. So I love them. I think either get a very good pet sitter, have some amazing parents or guardians or friends who are willing to take care of them for you, or maybe hold off a little bit until you feel a little bit more stable in your career and you feel like you're going to be sticking around one place for a while. Otherwise, it can be kind of challenging and difficult for you to be away from them, but also, not very nice to put them through being alone for extended periods of time.
Catherine, you have another challenge that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I thought I would just bring up something a little different, and it's learning that we did talk about it briefly, just like learning that it's okay to not necessarily like what you're doing all the time, because there might be a reason for it. Sometimes you have to learn things or experience things first, and then you're able to take that experience and just it makes you either a better person or have a different experience. Like I just can't speak enough for recognizing that a little bit of discomfort and perhaps thinking, oh, this isn't the right path right now, I should be doing something else. My goodness, did I ever learn a lot by doing some of those things, and that has made me a better person, a better geological engineer, and also I have experienced things that I didn't think were possible. So sometimes going through that and recognizing that is hard but worth it.
Yeah, may I build on that, Catherine, too? I agree. I think, and for me, that's where mentorship really came in, was kind of looking ahead and looking at where that mentor or the person or that idol that I had, where they were. And I would question when I would be doing things that they weren't always my favorite. But I love where they're at, and I would really like to get there. And I know that I have to climb this mountain or this steep slope to do that. So it's really just looking ahead sometimes when it's hard, and it can be hard.
I totally agree with that. There's something of knowing where it goes and how I describe it as like you're adding tools to your toolbox, and you need to have a broad range of them, and you kind of build on certain ones. And once you figure out which ones you don't like and which ones you do like, you kind of can start moving towards that. But you have this base that makes you better.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. And you know what you don't like. There is a ton of value in knowing things that you don't want to do, but finishing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great kind of intro into a question that we got here actually from Million. So he's wondering how you balance your work life and like other interests and passions. Did anyone want to comment on like how?
I think for me personally, it did take a while to get to that point where I was able to find some balance. I was a very eager kid and young person. You know, I always wanted to do the most and do the best. And honestly, even in school, kind of like they kind of bred us into this culture of all work, no sleep. You know, if you're not tired coming to your crit, if you didn't have an all-nighter, then you could have done more. So I think it took a while for me to realize how important sleep and rest and hobbies are after I got out of school. And I always still, like, to be truthful, I still struggle with that. Sometimes I am a bit of an overachiever, but I am finally at a point where I know that to be able to do the best work, to have like clear-minded thoughts and bring my best self to work, I have to be rested. I have to be in a good mental space. And, you know, I'm taking my weekends back, and I'm also exploring hobbies. I mean, my hobbies are kind of very similar to my work. So I have, my job is more corporate right now, and it's like for a larger global company. So the problems that we're solving are very different. But my own hobbies they're more exploratory. You know, I'm dabbling in ceramics and woodworking and expanding my skill set and my creativity that way. So I think it did take a while to get to this point, but it's important. I think it's also important to have mentors at work or people that you look up to, that you can talk to and kind of see, okay, so you were able to achieve so much. How did you do it? And for them to have kind of a positive influence on you.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to the mentors that you had that during your transition. Do you have a lot of mentors as well?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I think as a young kid, I'm not sure if I mentioned this earlier. So my grandpa was a cabinet maker, woodworker. I had a parent who was an engineer, and also one that was very creative and artistic. So I think growing up, having those influences and kind of seeing and watching other people be masters of their craft, it inspired me to to like keep exploring. Now as a designer, I don't have one. I've never had like a specific mentor that I could go and discuss things with, but I've always really loved learning about designers that I admire. So I would research, how do they work? What is their process? And I think that's almost more exciting and interesting to me than just seeing beautiful pieces of their work. So I do have a list. A couple examples would be Naoto Fukasawa. I love his thoughtfulness, his simplicity, the way that he kind of thinks differently about problem solving. Hella Jongerius, I love her playful experimentation, and she does a lot with materials. But I do have a list that the moderator can drop in the comments of other people to look into if you're interested in this type of field.
Yeah, that'd be great. So like if any of you could share some resources and things that any of our watchers can look more into your field, that would be wonderful.
Sorry about
Yeah. And Erica, do you have any advice for a 14-year-old that'd be interested in this kind of work? Do you have any advice for
Oh, sorry, was that me again?
Yeah, Erica, yes.
Definitely. I think global, try out multiple aspects of the field, as many as you can. I think school counselors, in my experience anyway, they've really narrowed focus to very specific careers. Like, for example, I was interested in animals, and I thought the only career that I could have was to be a veterinarian. Now, of course, I know that that's not true. So even within industrial design, explore, see if you're really good at, or if you really enjoy creating renderings or models or mock-ups. Are you more of an idea person? Are you more interested in the sustainability aspect of it and how you can make better products that way? Or are you more interested in transportation? There are so many different avenues to explore. So I think while you're in school, that's the time, have multiple internships with different types of firms, and just really, really experience what's out there. There's so many years to kind of narrow your focus and narrow your skill set.
Great. So I think we're getting close to our end, but if any of our viewers have some burning questions that they want to ask, we will open up. Please comment in the chat. Oh, so we got one. So what advice do you have for girls in high school that want to go into science? Are there courses they should take or activities they should get involved in?
I guess sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, like, math and science is if you want to, it kind of depends on what type of science, but
I was going to say
math and science. I mean, I did biology, physics, chemistry. Biology was not my strength, and so I only did it in grade 11, and I am comfortable with that. But in engineering, it's not the same. But I imagine for Liz, biology was much more helpful.
Physics and math, I held on really tight to a friend to help me get through those courses. But yeah, biological sciences and environmental science, so opposite. Just take things you like, and like what we said earlier, try it. If you're no good at it, we may finish it. Just make it through the courses.
I also did a really neat course, like as a summer camp, that introduced me to different types of engineering. And so that was offered at one of the universities near where I grew up. And that gave you an idea of kind of what types of activities I could do, stuff like this at Science World's great way to be exposed. I think I also did some other after school activities. I really enjoyed math and science. And so that was something that I just kind of kept on doing and did everything I could.
There is a program, or a group called Eco Canada as well, that they offer some really cool virtual online courses. Again, this is leaving. We're kind of yin and yang, I think, which is great. But again, they're They've got really great courses for learning how to write, industry specific, and I believe that they do have high school courses as well, but check it out. Eco Canada.
Yeah, and I believe that you guys shared some resources in here. If I can get Dawn to share it in our comment section so that our viewers can check those out, that would be wonderful. Erica, do you have any, are there any courses or advice? Sorry.
Definitely. I do have a couple of books that someone will drop in the chat that I would recommend to kind of. One of them was 101 Things I Learned in Product Design School. I think it's kind of light, but it gives a really good overview of what to expect in school and perhaps some lessons that you might learn. There is a book that I really love. I'm trying to just remember the name of it, but it's Sketching for Product Designers. That should be in the links as well. And to kind of really get you into that visual communication mindset. Also, I did take night courses. So I was working as a graphic designer, and I took classes in lighting design, I think product design as well from Art Center College of Design. But you can also look more locally, and maybe a portfolio class might be interesting to get you prepared for college. And you do have to have that as part of your entrance requirements for design school.
Liz, did you have something you wanted
to say? I wanted to add one more thing, and look at LinkedIn if you guys have access to it. Look at profiles kind of within your areas. I think there's you have so many tools right now, especially, that have grown over the last decade. Check out opportunities, check out companies that you might be interested in. I know my company does have high school students that come in and they talk to various folks. And I know that a lot of firms have that, or honestly, you can just give the front desk a call and usually somebody will be willing to talk with you. So don't be shy. I think that right back to my biggest struggle getting into this industry, I think I honestly I called up this company and I ended up with a job, and I asked a few questions and they helped me navigate in the right route. So I think that there's a lot to be said about just asking somebody.
Oh yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I also think a great way to get a feel for a company that you're working with is asking if they want to if you want to volunteer and be like, and just try out certain things that way. Find opportunities where you can volunteer your time and see if you enjoy that field. I think is also a good way.
And if the people are happy in their careers in a way that, makes you happy, if you want to be outside all of the time and you get an opportunity to shadow, that's awesome. If you want to be in an office environment. So I think opportunities to shadow are great. And they do it through high school programs a lot.
Yes, absolutely. So I believe we're almost out of time. So we would just all like to thank you for joining us today, and a huge thank you to our mentors, Erica, Catherine, and Liz, for sharing their time and experiences with us. So thank you so much. So next up, we have a closing game show happening on the main stage screen. So be sure to head over there to participate.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.